Hello, everyone, no matter where you happen to be around the world today. Welcome to this play-by-play program brought to you by Explore.org and the Raptor Resource Project. My name is Mike Fitz. I'm the resident naturalist with Explore.org, the world's largest live nature cam network. Right now, we're looking at live footage at our Decorah eagle nest with a couple eaglets in there, healthy looking, and a lot of activity at this nest. It's going to be a main focus of our program today. But to help us talk about this are my two co-hosts from the Raptor Resource Project. Amy Reese is with us. Amy, how are you doing today?
Good. Thanks for having us here.
And we're also joined by John Howell, the director of the Raptor Resource Project. John, thanks for being here.
Oh, you're welcome. Great to be with you guys.
So during our program today, we'll look at live footage of bald eagles. We also have peregrine falcon cams available to us. And we'll describe what we see in the behavior and the biology of the birds. We'll examine some recent events from the cameras. Finally, we'll try to answer some audience questions that were submitted in advance. So be sure to submit your questions for future bald eagle play-by-plays through the Ask Your Bald Eagle question form. It's a Google form. It's available to anybody. You just have to have the link. So ask a moderator in the chat for the link to it if you want to ask us questions. And thanks to everybody who sent in their questions so far. To begin, we'll get back to this live footage in just a second, but if you're curious about the location of Explore.org's cameras in partnership with the Raptor Resource Project, let's take a quick tour because we're traveling to the Mississippi River region of Iowa, Minnesota, and Wisconsin. In partnership with the Raptor Resource Project, we watch two bald eagle nesting territories near Decorah, Iowa. The Decorah North Bald Eagle Nest is located on private property north of town. And then the territory we simply call Decorah is south of town at the fish hatchery. Heading farther north, the Trempealeau eagles make their home on private property near Trempealeau, Wisconsin. We also watch two peregrine falcon aeries in this area as well. The southernmost is located at Great Spirit Bluff on the Minnesota side of the river. The Mississippi Flyway cam sits nearby in the river's floodplain, and that cam's offline, but we're working to get that back online. And then finally, Castle Rock in Wisconsin, that is home to a peregrine falcon area as well. This is the bluff and cliff face along the river. Don't confuse it with the town of Castle Rock, which there are at least two, I think, in the area in different states. So that's where our cameras are. Let's get back to live footage, and I think John, maybe we'll start with our view of the Decorah nest, because it's been sort of like the center of attention for, I know, a lot of our Eagle Cam fans over the last couple of weeks, because we can welcome DH3 and DH4 into the world. They were born March 27 and 29, or hatched March 27 and 29, respectively. And everything that I've been able to see on the cameras, John, it seems like they're doing quite well.
Yeah, definitely. It's been a great year so far at this hatchery nest, and both eggs hatched. They were on time. We've had some inclement weather. We've had some wet weather. We've had rain and some other things that can make it hard for feeding events and things like that with young eaglets, but it has gone very well. And I think just as we were opening up here, I was watching and I saw the eaglets DH3 and 4 were exposed and a parent was not there, and we got to see that the digestive tract is working well. We got to see a poop chute fly up in the air, a small one, and got to watch out for those because sometimes those can become airborne and hit camera lenses. So we don't like that when that happens, but they look like they're doing well. And stocking the fridge, you can see actually, I think another trout has been brought in. And earlier I've been kind of watching, and our camera operators were commenting about a record that was broken based on just fish deliveries. And we had years back with Mom Decorah and DM2, just a record breaking amount of fish that were brought in. And I think it was 9 fish in 15 minutes
Wow.
that year. And it's, like I said, it's a really cool thing that just seems to happen as soon as eaglets hatch. It's like the male eagle probably sometimes the female too, but mostly the male will come in and just stock the fridge and just keep dropping food. Right on the 29th, we counted 10 fish coming in that day from HD. So keeping up with that, and what I'm told, beating at least the overall daily record of DM2 with 9 fish way back when.
And Amy, that is, in case there's any new viewers watching, that is way too many fish for these young eaglets to eat. It's probably more of an instinct by the parents to, there's food available. Hey, I'm going to deliver it to the nest because that's where it's needed, even if they can't physically fit that much fish in their stomach and crops.
Oh, yeah, they absolutely larder or stash food. If you think about the incredible growth rate of eaglets, especially really early on in the first 3 or 4 weeks, they need a lot of fuel. And when they need food, it's best if they have food now. So lardering helps prepare them for any eventual times of shortages. We haven't really seen it happen here in Decorah, where we've got the trout hatchery and the retaining pond and everything else. But it's an instinct they have, I think, just to store as much food as possible against times of scarcity. Also, the young are always, always, always clamoring. They're either sleeping or clamoring for food or pooping, right? Like that's what they do right now. So I'm sure that could spur the parents on to bring more food in the same way. Like if another species opens its mouth and it's got that gape or that redness, the parents are like, oh my God, feed it. I would tend to think that the eaglets vocalizing and begging for food spur the parents on just to bring food.
And John, you mentioned that there's been some wet weather recently. We do have a clip, I think, from April 2nd. So the eaglets would only be a few days old at this time, but the parents really have to, and essentially, I mean, they have to be the umbrella, and I think a lot of times people will call this the mombrella, to shelter
Right.
their vulnerable young at this time because they're at this stage where their bodies are developing and gaining mass and the metabolism and the physiology to keep themselves warm. But if they get wet at this time of the year, or it's not this time of the year, but when they're this young, it's quite dangerous for them.
Yeah, and usually this kind of weather that we're looking at with this clip here, I'm not sure if there's going to be a feeding here or not. It looks like it, but depending on the rain and the temperature, that exposure time and possibility for feeding might be less. This is obviously a feeding event, and they're clambering over to the side of the nest cup there. Um, we had a rough time last year with Trempealeau. We saw that happen with wet, cold weather, high winds, and we actually lost 2 eaglets last year at the Trempealeau nest because of that. So it's a very vulnerable time for the young eaglets, and you can imagine if it was hard rain, sleet, or snow, continuously, they would have to make it through that first time period of really not getting much to eat, depending on whether the parent could leave them exposed or not. So we'll take what we got this year. It was great to see that they've made it through that not so rainy time period, and the weather's been a little bit more stable.
And one thing I love about that clip too is you can see how wet mom is, right? But when she gets up, the eaglets, they look fluffy and dry and comfortable. So really great job there um, by DM2. One of the other things that's happening at this time of the year or not this time of the year, excuse me, with this age of eaglets. So again, very young, less than 2 weeks old. Amy, is that they're sort of establishing a bit of a hierarchy between them, and usually it's the older eaglet that has a physical advantage over its younger siblings. So sometimes we see what I don't know if this is something that the Raptor Resource Project nicknamed or the webcam audience collectively, but they call it bonking. And can you talk a little bit about sibling rivalry in eaglets?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is something that we see in every nest we watch. It can be exacerbated. I would say, like the first year we watched, maybe it was the Decorah North nest. We think that maybe Mr. Was it Mr. North? Mr. North was a new provider. It seemed like they were bringing less food into the nest, and we saw really a lot more bonking and a lot more sort of aggressive sibling interaction. But what's pretty typical is what we're seeing here, which is the eaglets are going to establish a pecking order that's simply part of eagle life, right? When they get out of the nest, there's not going to be a parent handing them food. So they need to understand how to get food, how to steal food, how to defend food, how to keep food, and when to show up with that eagletude, like, no, you are not getting my food, right? Hierarchies are an important part of eagle life, and you're right about the oldest one generally ruling the roost. At least, depending on sex distribution as well, but at least certainly for the first, I want to say it's 50 days. If you've got a male first, he's still probably going to be bigger, right? So he's going to rule the roost. Females are always bigger, so the first hatch would rule the roost from the get-go. The bigger eaglet tends to get what it wants. But if you watch the smaller or younger eaglet, it also tends to be pretty good at defending itself generally, at getting food sort of on the sly, and at defending its own food when it needs to defend it. I have been absolutely impressed with all the feeding that's going on in this nest between both parents. Those little eaglets, people get worried like, oh, the little one just got bonked. Is it getting enough food? It is. What you look for is the crop, that big esophageal swelling. Even if you didn't see it get fed, if it has a big crop, it's got plenty of food inside it. We're going to see some more bonking here. No, it doesn't look like it. Oh, and so we see this behavior a lot early on in nest life, but we'll probably see it subside. I want to say maybe third or fourth week. You'll still see it occasionally because they're still going to compete for food. But we think that maybe as they get older, the bonking probably hurts a lot more, right? They're getting bigger, they're getting stronger, their aim is better, their beaks are bigger, and so on and so forth. And once the hierarchy is established, there's really not a need to keep establishing it through continued fighting when you could be eating or sleeping instead.
Yeah, we see that a lot with other animals too. Like once you kind of establish where you sit in the pecking order, if you're the dominant individual, it's kind of a waste of energy to always, throw your weight around if you don't have to. And if you're a subordinate individual, hey, you kind of just want to stick in your lane so you aren't risking attracting the ire of a more dominant um, individual. And John, at this age too, when they're like really young like this, there's a lot of that headbutting going on. There's a lot of that bonking, but they don't necessarily have like the weaponry to cause a lot of damage. They're gaining coordination, right? And they're gaining strength day by day, and they're gaining body mass. But it might be really hard for a very young eagle to injure its sibling when they're only like a week old. I would imagine, but correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, it really depends on the nest, the degree of that happening. Um, I can remember years where we were literally sitting on the edge of our chairs rooting for the youngest of the three eagles, and that was at the Decorah North nest, and I'm pretty sure I remember that year that the youngest did not make it, and that availability of food is a big factor. In that case, mobility. You can see the adult there feeding, and whether that's hatchery dad, I think that's hatchery dad, but they're not very mobile at this age, so whichever one is closest to the adult at that time period is going to have the advantage. What we will see though is the older one, and depending on the variability and the difference in the size from how many days of hatching that eaglet has an advantage in, that beak is fairly sharp. I don't think, we've ever seen that the beak will actually do enough physical damage to hurt the other eaglet. What it really instills is that pecking order, and it will instill a fear of sticking its head up for food. So what we typically will observe is our couple, the eaglet will sit up nice and tall, little wings will come out, and then all of a sudden from behind will peck the other one in the back of the head. And then a lot of times you'll see that smaller eagle typically just go down into the nest and kind of sit and wait it out. So that's typically what we'll see. Um, and that cycle that Amy talked about with eating and then sleeping in a food coma and then evacuating and shooting mutes out, eat, sleep, poop, that can be to the advantage of the eaglet that doesn't get fed right away. So let's say that dominant eagle gets fed right away, it's satisfied, it's sleeping. We'll see cases where it won't get up and try to get fed right away. So you'll see the second or the third, or sometimes even if there's 4 eaglets in the nest, that pecking order is will be in transition just based on who's sleeping and who's awake and ready to eat.
And I've wondered how it affects them later on in life, because I know from banding peregrine falcons, you'll have 4 nestlings ranging in age from maybe like 22 days to 19 days. And you'll have one that's just really aggressive, biting, footing, really struggling. And you'll have another one that when you pick it up just kind of goes limp. And I've wondered, because we don't necessarily know, right, before we get there and start handling them, who had what role, although we can frequently tell who's oldest based on plumage and to some degree size, but especially plumage emergence. But I've wondered if maybe the ones that tend to go limp right away are the ones who have been more submissive in the nest. And so they've sort of learned the lesson that when somebody approaches you or when somebody picks you up or you get handled, that the response is sort of to go limp, versus the falcon that's always been like first in the food line and top of the pecking order, maybe fighting a little harder. I don't know that, but I have wondered it.
Well, those are all, yeah, really interesting considerations. And maybe, yeah, let's head back to live footage here for just a second. I kind of wonder, Amy, just based on building off of your point, whether, if you're a small eaglet and a small falcon chick, and you make it through that period where you're, and if, for lack of a better word, getting bullied by your siblings, and that's not a moral judgment on the behavior. That's just kind of what they're doing. Maybe that could build in a little bit of resiliency or instill some resiliency in those very young and small birds, because they're able to deal with hardships, early in life, and maybe they're going to be able to handle hardships better as they become independent. But again, that's a hard thing to measure.
Yeah, I've certainly been tempted to write a blog called Everything I Learned in an Eagle's Nest, because it is really interesting to see them get these life lessons in being eagles that then they'll extend and build on after they leave, first in what we call outdoor school, which is sort of the period that they spend with their parents prior to dispersing, and then what we see over on the Mississippi River at the Lake on Alaska Cam, the Flyway Cam, and from GSB as well, being able to look out and see some of those behaviors applied as winter deepens and we see eagles coming through, right? So I do think that some of what we see is probably based on these lessons, and certainly they're learning important things about how to be an eagle and interact with other eagles, even long before they leave the nest.
Just a great view here of, I think this is, Decorah mom number 2. So this is the mother feeding her eaglets. John, I wanted to ask about sort of like feeding intervals, because I think we saw sometime around 2:30 local time, so it's 2:30 Central Time, there was a feeding, then a lot of brooding going on, and now we're seeing another feeding. Is that seem like a reasonable interval for them? Does the feeding interval increase as they age, or is it more frequent now? And then, kind of later on in the nesting period, the parents are like, "Hey, kid, you're on your own. I'm going to drop a fish here, and you're going to figure it out."
Yeah, that's a good question. As I mentioned before, some of it is opportunity based on the weather and things like that. More fish in there than the eaglets could eat right now. Sometimes the adult will take a snack and eat itself on the nest. That once in a while it's two for you and one for you and one for me. So we see a little bit of that going on, that adult is actually feeding the young eaglets and itself right now. So um, I think um, it really it depends on activity. I don't know exactly what kind of signaling the adult will get with young that are underneath it that may be restless and maybe getting hungry. If that is a signal to the adult to get up and do a feeding, it seems like if the weather's not bad, they're typically going to get what they're going to need if there's food available. Like I said, a couple of those years, and Amy mentioned it too, where there's a lot more aggressive behavior, it is fighting for that food that's available. What we're seeing here and what we've seen so far at the hatchery nest, this is N6. There's plenty of food available. There's multiple feedings going on each day. I think, Amy, what are we getting now for totals per day? I think we've been keeping track of some of that, but it's amazing the number of feedings that go on each day. In the summaries here, I'm just looking to see how many we've got yesterday, for example.
Between April 1st and yesterday, there were a total of, let's see, well, I have DH3 ate 63 times and DH4 ate 64 times. HM2 fed 50 times, HD fed 14 times, and we saw a really cool tandem feeding. So, I mean, they're eating all of the
Yeah,
time.
right. Yeah, I'm just looking at the updates from yesterday. Two fish brought in, 11 feedings, and those are split up between hatchery mom two and hatchery dad. And then, yeah, so the obviously the time spent feeding, is going to vary as the eaglets get older, how much they need to be fed. We're going to get into that stage when the thermal down starts coming in and they're growing at such a high growth rate that there will be more time spent feeding, and the bites will be bigger and probably some more frequency in feeding events through the day.
And I want to apologize to our webcam audience because I misidentified this bird. This is Dad. I think one of the key identifiers there is that Dad is missing a talon on that middle toe on his right foot. Is that correct? Am I seeing what I think I
Let's
see?
see.
No,
Let's see.
no talon there.
I'm trying to look here, and looking at the structure of the head and the orbital of the eye. Usually female, some darker feathers around the eyeball socket there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this might be HM2.
Yeah, I'm
Oh,
leaning
okay.
This might be
towards
the female.
HM2 too. That missing talon is really hard to see. I'm leaning towards HM2 for the same reasons that John is. Looking at the brow, there might be a couple dark head feather veins in there, although they are harder to see. There is a dark mark kind of back behind her right eye a little bit. You can sort of see it when she turns her head. So, although we're still learning this pair of eagles, and it takes a while to get those ID skills sharp, and eagles can look different depending on the light, how wet, slick back their head feathers are. Sometimes the ID is easy, and sometimes I'm like, oh my God, I have no idea. Our camera operators pretty much always know. I don't.
Well, it's another lesson for.
Yeah, it can be hard to tell, and sometimes they might look larger, but they can adjust the just they call it a rouse when the raptors will fluff their feathers, and depending on temperature and other things, they can elevate those feathers, and they're not laying down as smooth and really fool you sometimes. I'm looking at how far back the opening of the beak goes with respect to the eyeball, and the eye socket, and that from what I've seen over the years for the female, it tends to go further back towards the back of the orbital for the eye. And I guess I can, if I'm going to be honest here, I can say I've got to check with our cam operators, and we always got the option of doing that with our communication, and they've been indicating that this is hatchery mom. So I've got to cheat there to look, but yeah, the toe, if we could see that well, it's kind of hidden underneath there. That definitely is a characteristic of hatchery dad.
And
All right.
you
Well,
can, oh, sorry.
I just wanted to, sorry, Amy, I wanted to say, let this be a lesson to not, for our audience to not always listen to me and double check what I have to
We
say.
all make mistakes.
Right.
Uh-huh.
It's so interesting. Like after a while, though, you stare at these animals long enough, and there's I describe it sort of like as you get just a feeling for who's who. It's like a gestalt. Like, oh, I can kind of, this is that bird is giving me the vibe of dad, even from a distance. And some of our I don't know how our webcam audience does it sometimes, but like it would just be like pixels across a valley or something. But like, oh yeah, that's dad for sure. So it's really amazing, Amy, what our webcam audience can do given the time and opportunity to observe the birds.
Yeah, and I would encourage people to do a few things. I think of it, and again, like I don't always, especially this time of the year, have enough time I don't have as much time to watch them as I would like. Um, John and I and Dave are getting ready for peregrine banding season, and we have field work. Like there's always things going on. So definitely our camera operators, our chat moderators, and much of our audience are going to be quicker at that than for sure me, because it really takes time to kind of, well, you said like vibe with the bird. So to understand the behaviors you're looking at, to understand individual ID marks, to take a look at really ephemeral marks like today HD has a dirty face, today HM2 is wearing beak bling, like that'll change tomorrow. But for today, if you can't see other features, that might help you identify them. And I kind of think of it as being the difference between like, I've got a number of birding books that have plumage and I love them because it's so helpful to say like, oh, well, that looks like a red-winged blackbird or whatever, right? But I also have another book called Hawks from Every Angle that talks more like what you talk about, like the gestalt of the bird, how it appears, its shape, its size, what's my general impression, what behaviors does it have? If it's feeding a hatchling, I might not know anything about the eagles, but because females are so much more likely to feed early on, I'd probably assume, with absent any other information, it was the female. If it's hauling fish in, like John mentioned, again, in those really early days, sure, females will bring some food in, but the males bring in most of the food, so that's probably the male. So take your time. If you really want to be able to do this, take your time. Ask our moderators and Moderators Explorer for clues because they're really, really good at it. And then check out explore.org's snapshot galleries because users collect pictures every hour of the day in every condition imaginable. So it gives you a lot of practice at identifying the eagles or whatever animals you're watching based on their gestalt, on what they're doing, on their field marks, on how they look at any given time of the day. I find that to be just extremely helpful.
Those are all really great tips. Yeah, thanks for sharing those, Amy. And I know you kind of outlined that in a recent blog post on the Raptor Resource Project website too. So I think I would invite our audience to go check that out. As well. And while we were seeing Mom here kind of settle down on her eaglets once again, John, you were mentioning earlier sort of like the record number of fish deliveries at this nest, and we got kind of like a good view of how many fish were kind of like to the left of the parent. Sometimes I've looked at eagle nests and I've been like, oh, that looks kind of comfortable, but then I remind myself of like, oh, it's probably also covered in like dead animals everywhere. It seems like they're just big petri dishes almost in a sense.
Yeah, I remember a couple of years back, I was really amazed at the whole web of life in the nest, and there was what should I say? Maybe the best word is decaying, marinating, like a possum or something that was in the nest, and it was the summertime, so there were a lot of flies around, and flies lay eggs, and those turn into maggots and things like that. So one time I was testing the how good the zoom was on the cameras, and I think I I probably pushed a bunch of watchers away by showing some stuff that's pretty hard to watch based on at least what humans think, but also looking back and seeing it's like these eagles, these raptors, they don't bat a feather lash, eyelash, or whatever with what's going on and what they're eating. It's all gonna become part of their food. So
Well, yeah, that's one of the, the webcam experience is really great in a lot of ways, but we can't smell what's happening there in real life. Uh, so yeah, when you're, Amy and John, you both do, banding from time to time. I don't know how much you're doing banding for like bald eagles, but when you're ascending to a nest and it's an active nest, you've both had that experience. Like, what is the odor like? Is it like, oh yeah, I know that there's been a lot of dead fish here? Is it just kind of like hits you when you get close enough?
we haven't been
We
out up in the eagle nests while they're active. Uh, so I guess we haven't gotten the opportunity
Okay.
get up right up close and personal in the eagle nest. Correct me if I'm wrong, Amy, but we typically haven't focused on that part of our eagle nests. Getting up there early and banding young up in the eagle nest. That's typically part of the research that we're doing with peregrine falcons the most, and more recently with golden eagles that we're trapping uh, for our eastern golden eagle studies. We're banding them and getting to take a look at them. So wouldn't know. One thing I'll mention though is of eyesight and hearing and smell for these raptors. Smell is really their least keen sense. So what we probably would be turned off by. Um, Naturally, it's not as much of an issue for them.
Yeah, and I will say that peregrines, they have, because we handle them banding, we do band them, and we banded what, John, 86 last year. I would
Yeah,
say, and I'm curious what you have to say about this. They do have a little bit of a smell. It's not a bad smell, but it's sort of across like if you've had snakes and had a snake cage, it's a little bit of that reptilian odor, and then like maybe a little spicy or something. I like the way they smell, but they do have a distinct, completely apart from John's comment on their sense of smell or how a nest might smell. Peregrine falcons themselves, the nestlings, do have like kind of an intriguing scent. It's a little different.
yeah, you're right. It's definitely noticeable, and um, it it's it's the raptor, it's their body themselves. I'm sure a combination of that and the paint on the walls, the mutes. I mean, you can see with Falcon nest box, we take a look at the nest box GSB later, or the cliff walls and the pothole at. We can see the nest box right there. You can see some white spots there from mutes being shot there. So you're going to smell that. The pea gravel that's there, or just the substrate that has come off of the decaying rock walls, in specific at Castle Rock versus the pea gravel that's there. That will be a reservoir for microbes and for decaying material and the mutes and even decaying dead birds that are brought in. We'll find bones, we'll see feathers that are decaying. Pretty much a whole suite of things that are coming from the cycle of prey coming into the nest and then being digested and then being shot. In an eagle's nest, most of it's making it out of the nest. I've at Trempealeau specifically, I've parked a vehicle below that nest, and primary diet being fish. If you let that dry more than about 15 minutes, it's going to be really hard to get off the car. So definitely an odor to it too. I can tell you from
Okay.
that experience at Trempealeau. So
All right. That's another lesson for everybody at home. If you have an eagle drop present on your car, then try to clean it off as soon as you can. I imagine it's probably, John, probably pretty acidic, right?
It would be, I would believe, going through the digestive tract, and they have some pretty strong acids that can partially break down bones, and they'll cough up a feather ball or the parts of the bird and pray that they can't digest will be coughed up as a pellet. So, and that happens for both eagles and for the falcons that we watch. But the stuff that does come through, yep, it's highly organic, and it's hard to get off after it sits for a while.
And if you're joining us a little bit late, thanks for being here with us. My name is Mike Fitz with Explore.org, and I'm here with Amy Reese and John Howe from the Raptor Resource Project. We're looking at live footage right now of a peregrine falcon that is incubating her 4 eggs. So both of the nests that we watch with our peregrines with the Raptor Resource Project, both of them have a clutch of 4 eggs currently. And we, expect them to hatch coming up later in the month. But since we're looking at peregrines right now, Amy, I had a good question that came in from Glass Interrupted, who was wondering about sort of like the eagle watching experience versus the peregrine family watching experience. And Glass wrote, "This is my first year being able to watch a full peregrine falcon mating and nesting season. What are some key differences I should anticipate if Elaine and Newman's eggs successfully hatch from what I'm used to seeing with eagles?" And just a background info for some of our cameras audience who may not be familiar, Elaine and Newman are the birds at Great Spirit Bluff. So this cam that we're looking at right now.
So first of all, everything is more compressed. So peregrine falcons fledge at between 38 and 41 days of age generally, and they achieve roughly adult body size 21, 22, 23 days. So nest life is about half of that. So everything is compressed into a much shorter time frame. You won't see as much playing house or fiddling with materials. So if you look at a nesting peregrine, they create a scrape or a shallow depression by rolling their breasts and churning their feet. They don't build nests out of sticks or grass, and they don't they spend some time on their nest, but they don't spend the months and months that bald eagles do. So they don't have the same kind of attention to nesting materials. They don't really fiddle with them to the same degree that bald eagles do. And we don't see the kind of nesting material play to anywhere near the same degree. They interact with one another. They interact with their parents. They have fun, but they don't sort of interact with nesting materials. They're very curious. They're attentive to their surroundings out of the nest. They track their parents' coming and goings. They track their intruder comings and goings. And when they start fledging, the peregrines that haven't fledged yet, and this is really fun to watch, are very, very curious about what's going on with their siblings because they're feeling that pull, right, of fledging, but they're not quite there yet. So it's really fun to watch them tracking their siblings as they come and go and chase parents and fly through the sky. And then the parents are usually somewhere near the nest, but you will see them leave the young alone sooner. Again, we've got this really compressed time period, right? So you see teaching and learning in the nest, but I suspect, given the short period of time in the nest and that peregrine falcons are like one of the very most skilled acrobatic flying birds in the world, that more learning goes on between parents and children and between siblings after fledging than before it. So those would be some differences.
Well, thank you. Yeah, very much for that information. While we're looking at peregrine falcons, before the program, we were talking about, or John, you had mentioned to me how happy you were to see peregrines back at these nesting locations because of the risk of avian flu to peregrine falcons specifically. But we did get one question about avian influenza and bald eagles. Maybe we'll try to answer that one first, and then we can get into a bit of a conversation about avian influenza and peregrine falcons. But the question that came in from our audience about this was from Holly M., who wrote, "How has avian influenza impacted bald eagles in the Midwest?" John, do we have any information about that?
So it definitely has impacted the bald eagle population. As we were talking before, the first first year or two where avian influenza had hit the shores of the U.S. over Newfoundland area and came across um, bald eagles and great horned owls really took a hard hit. Significant losses of eagles and great horned owls versus peregrine falcons. I'll just mention those three, and maybe hawks. And some of that is diet related, but really hit the bald eagles hard and the great horned owls hard based on the USDA numbers and tracking that we were following early on when avian influenza really hit the North American continent. Now, through Raptor Center, research that we've done, others, there is a lot of testing that's being done for the bird flu H5N1 virus, and we've been finding with golden eagles, and I know from papers that have been published and in preparation with the Raptor Center and just communications that bald eagles and other raptors have developed antibodies for avian influenza. So not necessarily a death sentence for a bird that gets it. We've found out, it seems like, with talking about the peregrine falcon population, as we were mentioning, that it tends to be carried by waterfowl and shorebirds with their migration and bringing it along with them. So with the peregrine falcons that are here, they're eating a lot of birds, not necessarily waterfowl birds or shorebirds that are out living on the water. More what I guess you'd classify as blackbirds or songbirds or birds like that. So I don't think that they carry that as prolific as the waterfowl do. So I don't think, I know that the impact on bald eagles has not been enough to make us think that there's a real threat to their existence here. It's usually hitting an area, a pocket of an area where infected birds or a group of, let's say, Canadian geese or something like that is migrating through an area, and eagles are feeding on some of the infected birds, and we'll see pockets of impact on bald eagles or other raptors, or even other bird species other than raptors. So it can be regional, temporal in time, depending on the time of year. The virus actually, once it warms up in the springtime and the summertime, the virus is not able to survive, and getting through that migration time period from winter to spring is a big time period that we watch and can have an effect on the virus being active and being able to be mobile in the population and affect other birds of prey. So with the falcons, at least in the Midwest here, seemingly up along the Mississippi Flyway, where our nest cams are, with partners, power plants, grain facilities, and like Great Spirit Bluff and U.S. Bank in this area, and Castle Rock. We've got the same parents that are here that were here last year, and that's a good thing, or even years before. So not seeing that turnover is a good sign for them not being infected by other birds or the prey species that they're taking in. And I can see that's a lane that just came in. I was going to mention in identifying these raptors, one thing makes it a little bit easier, and that is, at least with bald eagles, it's typically the female that will incubate over the nighttime hours and the early morning hours, and then be relieved by the male in the morning. Similarly with falcons, I believe, too, and you can tell a little bit of the changes in the male R stripe and some of the markings on the birds here, but it looks like Elaine just came in and settled down on the eggs at Great Spirit Bluff.
we saw something really cool there too. So she has a central brood patch and then lateral brood patches under each wing, and you could see her get those eggs into her brood patches. So the ones that are sort of underneath or by her wings on her body, and then settling over the one and her breast feathers engulfing it as she went. So that was really cool. I'm gonna go back and get that footage.
Are those brood patches? Do they sort of persist into the after the period of time after the eggs hatch? Uh, because they do need to brood their young, like we've been seeing with the eagles for a period of time. So how long do those brood patches persist on the parents before they sort of grow feathers there again?
I don't know the exact time period, but I do know they start regrowing feathers pretty quickly. So if you're looking at peregrine falcons, um, young natal down starts growing in 8 to 9 days. Bald eagles, it's a little older than that, but roughly the same time period. So the requirement to brood to apply heat continuously to either eggs or young stops pretty quickly after the eggs hatch, and the young get older and they grow in their thermal down and eventually feathers and begin to be able to thermoregulate at 14 or 15 days, right? So I again, I don't know the exact time period, but I have to think they start growing in replacement feathers not long after eggs hatch and young become able to thermoregulate.
Yeah, and I should know this too, Amy, but they start molting and actually losing some feathers, and the adult eagles and falcons in the summertime will go through their feather replacement time period. So that might have a little bit of something to do with it and timing of their nesting seasons too. I should know more about that, but that might have play a little bit into at least some of that growing back.
Right.
And I'm still consistently amazed that we have this opportunity to watch birds like peregrine falcons and like bald eagles on such an intimate level, getting to know them individually in these nests. And we just had a conversation about avian influenza and how that is a threat to many bird species, including the ones we enjoy on these cameras. Uh, but even though eagle populations and peregrine populations have recovered substantially since their sort of like low point in the 20th century, uh, John, that doesn't really mean that we can take our foot off the gas, right? Like we still need to be conscious of the threats to their habitat, including food and clean water, and maybe in diseases that are spreading throughout their populations.
Yeah, that's a really good point. When we're out and we're talking to people, and uh, that is one of the things that I think we continue to tell the story that Bob and others did, who were very active in helping with the recovery of the peregrine falcons post DDT, and just what is the threat of the time and at the moment. Is there anything that's at that level of threat to eagles and peregrine falcons right now? The closest that we could come to what happened with DDT right now is avian influenza. And, talk to the virologists and others out there. They know that just with what happens with viruses and the flu viruses and other things that we know, it's like one mutation can make a huge difference. So do we know exactly what's going to happen 5 years now with the morphing and mutations that can happen with the different strains of avian influenza? We do not know. So that's why we think it's so important, and that's really a huge part of the focus that we put on our peregrine falcon monitoring program, along with others in the Midwest here, is the banding program and being able to tell how old the falcons are and are they moving around. And like in Elaine's case, we know that she checked out 3 different nests and 3 different males before she came back and decided to stay at Great Spirit Bluff. So that banding program and monitoring that, and that's a huge deal. But we really don't know what's going to be the next huge threat to these raptors, and being able to monitor them this way and through bird counts and other methods is very important.
And things people can do in their own lives, because there's not the work that we do with monitoring, with banding, with caring for populations is absolutely critical, like John said, to understanding what's going on with them. But there's not necessarily a lot we can do besides log a virus. There are things we can do, though, for anthropogenic or man-made problems that will boost the health of those populations and, regardless of what's coming down the pike, make it more survivable for them. So you can create habitat. You can look at how you garden. You can look at how you take care of your lawn. John talks a lot about hunting and fishing lead-free because that really does impact bald eagle populations. There's some argument about whether or not it's a population level threat. I know several respected researchers who say that really it probably is because it's so widespread. You can join a friends group, like maybe you join the friends of a park, maybe you join the friends of a river or a forest. You can meet other people like you and you can start advocating for clean air, habitat, clean water in your neighborhood where you can really make a difference, right? I can't come into your neighborhood. We can't come into your neighborhood. Maybe if you live in another state, a place we don't go to, a place we're not in. But you can do that. It's possible for you to do that. So we really encourage people not only to support our work and the work of other people working in the conservation sphere, professionally, but also to see like what change can you make in your own life, in your own neighborhoods, in your own cities, counties, regionally, because by creating habitat, by having clean air and clean water, we help protect those populations against the threats that are coming down the pike.
Yeah, really great advice. Every one of us can make a difference when we put our mind to it and take action. Uh, I would like to continue on that topic. However, there's some clips that I want to get to with our remaining time, and I'm kind of like in my mind, I'm like, oh, should we talk more about conservation because that's at utmost importance. But there's also some fun, interesting stuff to look at as well. And with the remaining few minutes, maybe I'd like to go to those. And we're looking at peregrine falcons right now. We're looking at Elaine, and Amy or John, I'm not sure which one of you alerted us to this, but a few days ago on April 5 in the morning, there was a red-tailed hawk that came in to the nest box. And I'm wondering if one of or both of you can kind of explain what was going on here. Was this a hawk that was just curious? Was this a hawk actually looking to make a meal out of out of Elaine? What was happening here?
Yeah, I can talk about that. Um, I was just I was just there a couple days ago and over the weekend, and it's really easy to hear the peregrine falcons now that they're here and they've been recovered in the Mississippi Flyway area. You know if there's nesting peregrine falcons close to you because you will hear them Top Gun, escorting different birds and raptors out of their sphere of influence, their protected zone. And in this case, what probably was happening is a hawk was looking for a place to rest and came up towards that. I don't know if it was just going to perch or possibly go into the nest, but as soon as it saw the falcon and got up close, Elaine was not going to let there be much time to figure out whether or not it wanted to stay, but it was a pretty quick reaction and escort. We don't know exactly what happened, but usually what happens with bald eagles or hawks or other raptors is the peregrine will pursue them, and you'll see their agility in the air. You'll see a bald eagle or a hawk just kind of rotating on its back with its talons in a defense mode, where with this peregrine falcon, following it closely right next to it. So it's looking to me like it probably was coming up to check it out, maybe perch on that perch pole there, or maybe even the nest cam pole or on top of the nest box, and didn't stay for very long.
Oh my God, that poor hawk. It's an immature. It was probably like, oh, this will be a nice place to sit. And then Sibling
Right.
jumps out at it. Oh man, I mean, I'm glad nothing bad happened, right? But I feel sort of sorry for the hawk.
Yes. Just coming up to congratulate the neighbor falcon on 4 eggs, and what happens? My gosh.
I brought you a cake.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Well, that
This
makes a
is
lot of
the
sense now that
yeah.
we that you explained it, John. Yeah, that the
This is the
hawk was
time of the year that they probably are the most protective, is nesting time period. There are times later in the year, in the fall, where I'm not sure that it would be quite as quick a response, but nesting time period for peregrine falcons, they're very protective of that zone in that area.
then one other clip I want to get to, and maybe get to some updates on the Decorah North nest, because DNF stopped incubating her egg around March 26th or so. It looked like wind blew some nesting material over the egg, and that was kind of like it for her. She searched around for a little bit, but she's been doing some bonding with the still unidentified male. Is that going to be a permanent name for that male, or are you eventually going to give him a moniker?
What do you think, Amy? Eventually, maybe?
Yeah, if he sticks around, and I mean, certainly they're working on a bond, but I don't want to go through. We did this back in 2018 when Decorah dad disappeared, and we had a succession of males wander through. He certainly seems to be staying around more than that, and they are working on their bond. But I think I'd rather wait and see what happens
Okay.
before we bestow him his moniker.
All right.
Yeah, we
Sometimes
have gotten
it's worth
enough.
waiting.
We've gotten enough detailed info, biometrics, and we've gotten some close-ups of his iris of his eyeballs and some other characteristics that we can most likely tell him from other males that might come into the territory. They do appear to be making attempts towards bonding, copulation, uh, contrary to what we saw in some videos recently, and with DNF not necessarily happy with him, either what he did on the nest or what. But both Amy and I were looking at this one. It looked like DNF was getting kind of frisky, and we were thinking that she probably was expecting him to mount her, and he's really getting pretty aggressive there about, come on, get with the program here. This
It's
is what you're supposed
time.
to be doing. If you want to stick around here, you're going to have to do a better job than that. But she looked like she was getting ready for copulation, and she was doing all the right things there. And he just, did not do what she was looking for him to do, I believe. So she is also looking like she's in that position of mantling. If he had food, we have seen on camera, you know, eagles are good food stealers, and female eagles expect their males to bring food in, not necessarily himself.
That just gets me
But
every time.
yeah, she's expecting him to bring food gifts in, and that's part of their courtship. So maybe it was partly it's time to do some egg fertilization. It's where's my food gift? It could have been a combination of the two, but they're looking like they're pairing up, and they're spending a lot of time with each other. So in the absence of Mr. North, which we have to, I think, guess that he's not around. This is good news to see them spending time together like that.
I think, yeah, anyone who's ever been in a relationship knows that there's some rough edges at the beginning, and sometimes not in the beginning. They just continue to be rough, no matter
I'm
how
not
long
sure
you're
if
with the partner.
I'm not sure which one I think is. I mean, I was remembering the raccoon pulling the goose foot down on the gander, and thinking that that was one of the craziest, funniest videos that I've seen in quite some time. And now after that one, watching DNF grab and try to pull him over and tell him what he should be doing, I'm not sure it rivals that, I think.
I mean, these birds are definitely individuals, right? We look at them, and even as long as like we've been watching them, they still do things that make us go, "What in the world? Like what?"
Yeah,
Well, I think that's
I want a piece of that wing.
Oh my god!
We got to put that one in the archives. That definitely is a keeper.
Absolutely.
There's so much we can learn from these birds and about their individuality, their skills, their ability to survive despite the challenges that they face. And I think what we've discussed so far in the program gives us a lot of fodder and a lot of things to think about as we're enjoying the cams going forward into this continued nesting season. And I think that's maybe time, unfortunately, for us to end our program on that point, at least. I want to thank my co-hosts today from the Raptor Resource Project, who bring their insightful commentary and their expertise to us every couple of weeks. Amy Reese and John Howell, thanks to you both for being here.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you.
And we'll be here, I think, again in a couple of weeks for another Raptor Resource Project play-by-play, talking about eagles, falcons, and whatever else we see on the cameras. My name is Mike Fitz with Explore.org. Thanks for joining us today, and until we talk to you again, enjoy the birds.